So here we are, Stephanie, and your book title is Preparing for Parenthood. And this is going to be our main talk of our meeting together at this author's talk. Could you just fill us in a few details about how it came and you conceived this specific book?
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Olga. I'm really excited to be here today. And welcome to anybody who's watching this and potentially anyone who's becoming a parent for the first time or the second or third or fourth time. So yes, my book is Preparing for Parenthood, 55 Essential Conversations for Couples Becoming Families. But before I move forward, I just want to acknowledge that lots of people come into parenthood in different ways. So there are lots of single parents. There are lots of people who choose to have a baby by themselves. There are people who pair with all different kinds of people. And so I just want to say that I respect however someone becomes a parent, and have lots of kudos to those who choose to do it alone or do it differently. And so with that in mind, even though my book is essentially for couples, even somebody who's parenting alone could have conversations with themselves, mull over the questions and come up with ideas of how best they want to parent for themselves. And so this book was gestated because after my husband and I had our first child, um, let me back up. Prior to us having our first child, I had worked with children and families my entire teenage and adult life. So I taught swim lessons, I coached swim teams, I was an educator in elementary and middle school. I've been a therapist for a long time. And so I've worked a lot with lots of different children across the lifespan from infancy to adulthood, as well as a lot of adults, and with those children's parents as well. And so I kind of came into parenthood feeling like I'd already had a lot of experience um, working with kids. And my husband and I are both therapists. And so we are used to having a lot of deep conversations and really unpacking things and doing all of that. And I'm also an avid reader. So if I go to the library, I check out like 10 books and I have them on my bedside table and I kind of pour through everything and try to digest everything. So when I was pregnant with our first child, I was in the space of, wow, I'm feeling really prepared for moving into this kind of unknown adventure. And I felt like I had read every book I could get my hands on and just felt like I had this experience. Um, and I'd also been delving into the pre and perinatal field. My husband and I were both doing Dr. Annie Brooks training in somatic attachment. And she was really excited because I was the only pregnant person in the group. And so our daughter, after she was born, then became part of our group as another participant, sort of, as the training went on for another year and a half. And so I again was going into the birth process, feeling like, okay, I need to kind of move through the birth process, but then the parenting piece, not that it would be easy, but I felt like I'd done everything that I could do. And it was so humbling becoming a parent the actual lived experience of it for me and for my husband. I know he would be okay for me speaking for him, because we were on the kind of the older side. I didn't have our first child until I was 37. And so I'd already had multiple careers, and I just felt like we were resourced and we were set up pretty well. And I really didn't anticipate it being quite as difficult as it was. And it was difficult, not just because we were both suffering from a lack of sleep, not just because nursing was difficult, not just because we had this beautiful little human being with exceptional needs, as every new parent does. But it was difficult because of all the conversations that we thought we had worked through, that we realized maybe we didn't have a lot of them and should have. And we should have had them before we were sleep deprived, because our tolerance level was a little bit lower with each other, even as therapists, even knowing what to say, and how to say it in a way that the other person could hear it. I feel like when you are sleep deprived, it makes it pretty difficult to remain patient and loving and open all the time. And so um, the first 3 months for sure, I was feeling kind of underwater. And my experience was that I felt like my husband kind of kept living his life the way that he had always lived, going to work, um, coming home. And I had taken a pause from work, and I was full time mothering our little baby, and that was both at times completely blissful and at other times really challenging. I felt pretty isolated, and my husband also didn't completely understand my point of view, which I find is very common in the parents that I work with. So he might come home and say something that felt really insensitive, like, well, he'd come home and I'd still be in my bathrobe and the house is kind of a wreck, and I was just trying to get through the day. And he'd say something like, "Wow, like, are you okay? What'd you do all day?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh," and um, I think it's really hard to understand until you're in it, right? And so until he had the opportunity to be with our daughter for kind of hours on end while I took care of myself, he couldn't really understand what I was going through. And so once we kind of moved through this period of time, I was really passionate about feeling like I didn't want other people to have to struggle in the way that we struggled, being resourced. I was trying to wrap my head around, if we weren't this resourced, what would it be like, right? If we didn't already know how to have conversations, if we were living in a difficult place or something like that, how much harder would it be then? So my intention with gestating and birthing this book, our third child, my third child, was to provide a framework for people to have difficult, deep conversations about pregnancy, about their relationship, about how things will shift as you go through this huge rite of passage, and how you want to navigate that together as a couple. So having the conversations prior to becoming parents, I feel like is, again, really helpful, because often you are sleep deprived and you're just trying to manage. Like, there's so much going on when you have a little one at home, especially if you don't have a lot of experience with it. If it's your first child, Then again, if you have a second child, you know, there's a lot more going on. Often there's a toddler and an infant. And so you're trying to navigate two. But my intention again was to just try to make people feel like there are things that I can do. There are conversations and action items that I can take, and end up feeling a little more like, okay, if we have challenges with, say, nursing the baby, if I have challenges with that, I know I have a plan. I might not know exactly how it's going to unfold, but I have somebody to call. I know a lactation consultant. If my husband and I are arguing about who got more sleep and who deserves more sleep, um, we have a plan of how to work through that. Of like, oh, remember when we talked about this and we decided that this would work well for us. And so there's kind of a framework set up so that couples can go in feeling a little more relaxed, a little more like there's no way that we can anticipate everything that's going to happen. And everybody's experience is a little different or a lot different. But if we have the framework, if we have the foundation, then we can build our own house in a way that makes sense for us. And I was really clear that for myself that I did not want to put a lot of my own values and beliefs on other people and how they parent in this book. And the reason is because I don't know the best way for everyone to parent. I only know the best way for myself to parent. And because my background is different than other people's background, my culture is different from other people's cultures around the world. There's no way for me to say, this is the way you do it. Even having a lot of education, a lot of experience in my world, I still didn't feel comfortable saying, this is how you do it. And I'm happy to always provide advice if people are looking for that, of what things helped me and what I've seen help other people. But I didn't want to put that out as the basis of the book. And so the book is set up with 55 conversations coupled with 55 action items. And the action items are things like complete a graph around what things look like now, how you anticipate they'll look like after baby arrives, and how you want to navigate those differences. Excuse me.
Actually, even this format is very empowering for the people for the reader, because it is, I see it as a way of offering an opportunity to reconnect or remain connected with their own center, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like, you know, often people do this kind of work before they get married. If they choose to get married, they'll have kind of these values conversations and sometimes not in a formal way, sometimes in a formal way, but, you know, how do you feel about having children? Where do you want to live? What kind of work do you want to do? And how's that going to interact with the kind of work that I want to do? How many children do you want to have? Do you like dogs? All these things that are important if you're going to be planning to spend potentially your life with one other person as your main person. You want to make sure you're on the same page and you have the same ideas for how you want things to unfold. And I feel like we don't do a lot of that for parenthood until we're actually in it, right? So until a problem creeps up, we're not we're not especially proactive in terms of parenting and parenthood. And so I feel like it's really helpful to talk about things like, one of the examples in the book is talk about, your own history. What was it like growing up in your household? And did you like the way it was? Did you enjoy your upbringing? Were there things that you wish were different? And how do you envision for yourself becoming a parent and going through the phases of parenthood? What might that look like? What might it look like when you have a 2-year-old who's having a tantrum? How do you want to kind of anticipate and imagine handling that situation, right? Are you more of a involved parent who wants to step back a little bit? Where do you fall on the many spectrums of ways that you can navigate that experience? And I think it's very helpful for both, if you're together with another parent, for both parents to really understand the other's background, because it brings in understanding, it brings in empathy, and then you can work together. So if you imagine that having a screaming toddler might be a challenging experience, it allows the other person space to step in and support you. Like, oh, I know that this is really hard for you when a child is screaming, or when a baby is crying for 2 hours, or those kinds of situations that you may have to navigate as a parent, most likely. So having those conversations, I feel like, is empowering, like you said, and it allows you to really take ownership for how you want to navigate parenthood, and to do it in a way that, if you are partnered, you and your partner are on the same team. Because so often the parents whom I see will come in and say, my partner does things this way, I want to do things this way. And our kids are splitting us. They know to go to this person if they want to have ice cream before dinner. They know to go to this person if they need more structure, right? Like, kids are so they're so bright. They pick up things so quickly usually, and they know exactly what's happening in the system, and they're trying to get their own needs met, right? So you have to be on the same page, whatever page that is, around how you're doing parenting and how you're navigating parenthood.
Now
So
that you mentioned that, Stephanie, you mentioned parenting and parenthood. Are they different?
yeah, I feel like they are a little bit different. Parenting, I feel like, is the active verb of what you are doing, right? So you're actively parenting a child. Parenthood, I feel like, is more of a construct, right? So it's the cultural pieces that come in, it's our beliefs, it's the wider context in which you are doing the parenting. And so as you are moving through this experience of parenthood, you are actively parenting. And so that's why I separate them. And there's so much that goes into parenthood as a construct. Each society's different beliefs, cultural beliefs, all of that plays in to how you choose to parent, right? So it depends on a lot of things, your own background and the cultural and social constructs in which you live.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
from your experience, what are the 3 most important things that partners do not consider as important to talk about until they have the challenge to do something?
Yeah, that's a great question. I imagine there are more than three, but the top ones that I always go to, the top two, in terms of the couple and their foundation, the very first one is always communication. And so I feel like if we know how to have difficult conversations and move through um, these challenges that we may have, um, we can kind of face anything that comes our way, right? If we know how to have respectful, loving communication with our partner, it makes everything so much easier, right? You can take a hard situation, not feel threatened that this means it's the end of the relationship or the end of your family, but just that it's a bump in the road. Like, oh, we disagree about this. That's interesting. How do we find our way through here so that we both feel like we're getting our needs met? And there are, ways to communicate that communication is its own whole um, years and years of study kind of experience. But there are tools that people can use to learn how to be better communicators if they feel like that's an area where they struggle sometimes. And I would say where they struggle in conflict, right? So a lot of people are great communicators, and then they'll hit a wall when it comes to conflict, often because of how they grew up or their own beliefs around conflict feeling scary or meaning the end of their own parents' marriage or something like that, right? And so learning how to communicate well in conflict, I feel like it's an art. And I always so appreciate seeing people who can do it really well. It's still something I work on all the time. And the harder the conflict, the more challenging it can be to move through it, right? And so it may not just be one conversation. It may have to be a year's worth of conversations to move through something. But I feel like that's the one of the two pillars that is absolutely crucial to any relationship, let alone to any partnership moving into becoming parents together. The second one is intimacy. And intimacy is important because without it, you're friends. Yeah. And so if you're going to be partners, and you're going to have a child together, um, keeping intimacy alive tends to be the second place where things break down most commonly, right? So often what I see is in young parents and parents who just have a very little one, the partner is ready to be intimate again before the birth parent is ready. And often that's because of the birth healing process. Often if the mom is nursing, she's totally touched out. It's like I don't want anybody to touch me. I just want my body back. And I'm not willing to share it with my partner right now. And so there can be a lot of tension around that. And often the partner's feeling a little bit kind of left out because mom and baby are having this little love fest together in the nursing, and they're getting all the oxytocin and everything else is flowing through them. And it's this beautiful relationship. And often the partner is feeling just a little on the sidelines sometimes. And not everyone, obviously, but this is where I see couples come in and having challenges. And then over the duration of, the early parenthood years, there can be a disconnect in how much intimacy is enough intimacy. And what does intimacy look like? Does it always have to mean sex, or can it mean something else? And so really getting clear with communication and with intimacy, like needs and how you're going to navigate things when you can't get your needs met in the way that you need to. And so that can be a tricky piece. Another big piece that comes up most often is roles and role changes. And so if the birth parent has been working full-time and suddenly is a full-time parent, or is a full-time parent for 6, 8 weeks, 12 weeks, however long they get off from work, different again in different areas of the world. There can be a lot going on for that person about their new role as a parent and who am I now? Am I just a mom, which I hear a lot of moms say, especially if they've chosen to be a full-time stay-at-home parent. Roles at home can change, right? So if one partner's going out and, in the world of making money and coming home, there can be this unspoken expectation that when I get home, you've already made dinner, the house is clean, whatever the thoughts are around those pieces. And it can be pretty shocking because the other person is full-time with the baby, or with baby and toddlers, or however that looks. And so the role changes can be really tricky. And I think a lot of people don't anticipate how much those are going to shift. They just have expectations in their mind about what it's going to look like. So those are some of the top ones. I would say another one is finances. For a lot of people, they're not anticipating the financial changes that are going to happen when you have children. And so we may think of things like, perhaps saving for college or something that's kind of far off in the future, but we haven't thought about the day-to-day pieces quite so much. Like, how much do diapers cost, or a diaper service? What about when our child starts eating solid foods? What about having another child? What's that going to look like? What kinds of medical bills might we be presented with? Things like that often cause some stress for couples. So the first third to almost a half of the book is really about the couple and their own foundation. And it's thinking about how things are right now and what's important, and then how they might shift as you move through these phases of pregnancy, birth, early parenthood, and then kind of projecting a little bit into the future about what that might look like. And so I feel like it's really just, again, so helpful to have these conversations early. And I have people coming to me now who are not pregnant yet. And they're like, we want to get a jump on this and start talking about this before we even have a little one in our world at all. And honestly, I think that's the best time to do it. But second best is during pregnancy. And after that is, as soon as possible.
So I guess that perhaps one of your next books is going to be preparing for being together, or preparing for postpartum intimacy.
Yeah, that's an idea. I'm not totally sure what things might unfold like, but I do have some ideas around trying to help support people once, if they kind of, I guess, miss that window, or just aren't aware that the window even exists, and they're kind of in it and in the midst of some of the challenges that can crop up in, even the first 2 to 3 years of early parenthood, and things shift and change during that time. But a lot of people, I feel like, they don't kind of see the light until their child's about 3 and maybe is starting to go out into the world a little bit, maybe going to preschool or something like that. They're like, I'm just in it, and it's hard to pick my head up and see that life is going on around me as well. And so my hope is to find something that would be helpful for people in that space and supportive for them, whether it's about how to bring intimacy back, how to improve your communication skills, how to navigate the first 3 years with your child, and everybody's different in what phases of parenthood kind of are more challenging for them. But I feel like for a lot of people, when the child starts developing their will structure around 2 to 3 years old, that can be pretty hard for parents, some parents. And so people tend to need support around that as well. So I'm not sure what a future book will look like, but just tossing around some ideas of things that hopefully will be helpful for people to just have some information on.
And to bring it to a closure, although it's always so empowering, so gentle to have conversations with you. When parents manage, when the two spouses manage to align themselves and to bring both of themselves and their gifts in order to support their family, what is the situation? What comes out of this? What have you seen? Some stories or one story you would like to share?
That's a great question. So my background is in attachment and bonding. And I would say that when you enter into any rite of passage, it's meant to be world shifting for you, right? And so coming together as a couple is one of those rites of passage, and kind of finding your person. Becoming a parent is one of those rites of passage. Becoming an elder is one of those rites of passage. And we have many of them throughout our lives. But I feel like if we can go through that rite of passage of becoming parents, and we are feeling connected and supported by our partner, and we support our partner in turn, and we have ways of navigating challenging conflict together, because it will always come up, that we provide a really nourishing space for this new little human that's coming onto the planet, which means not only a positive foundation as the couple, but also you create this nest. And that's why I love the nest symbol that I use on the cover, is like creating that nest is so critical, right? The nest has to hold these precious eggs. And once these eggs hatch, the little ones have to be supported in a way that they not only survive but thrive. And so when we are on the same page and we have a loving foundation that we're bringing this new little baby into, the baby will feel it. It will help the baby relax more. It will be easier for the baby to attach to the parents. It will be easier for the parents to bond to the baby. And so anything that potentially could interfere with that critical attachment and bonding, anything from a difficult birth, separation, challenges with breastfeeding, all those kinds of things, the sooner we can take care of whatever does happen, the better chances that family is going to have a more connected, more resourced, more relaxed experience together. And that's what I hope for. So having spent years working with people, you know, who are adults from 30 up, people come back because they still are dealing with things like birth trauma. And in my experience, it's like I'm honored to be able to help people. And gosh, if we could have taken care of that when you were a baby, how different your life might have been, right? You might have been able to just be more settled and relaxed in your body. Your nervous system might have been able to just be comfortable in the world instead of stressed. You know, we may have had different kinds of relationships. And so if we can set up babies right at the beginning, right, from preconception on, to be in this nourishing environment with their parents who are also nourishing themselves in their own relationship, we can, I mean, we can change the world with that, right? And so that's always been my belief and my desire to try to help as many people as I can be set up for that huge rite of passage so that they can really stay in connection and move forward through parenthood in this really positive, connected, nourishing way. And I feel like especially in our world today, the world is, I don't think, ever been an easy place to live in for everyone, but there's a lot of disconnection right now, right? And so there are so many ways we can help people come back together. And every time something really big and usually awful happens in the world, you see people come together. Like it's as if the light goes off of what's really important, and how do I really want to live my life? And it always seems to come back to, you know, the community and togetherness and watching out for people. We saw it during the pandemic, right? Like people were rushing in to help each other and help their neighbors who are isolated and things like that. And there's so much beauty in that. And I feel like we can bring that to more of the world because hard things are going to keep happening. That's just how the world is. And yet we can bring in, you know, the light. We can bring this piece in, especially for these little ones coming into the world today. So set them up really well, set up the parents to be really resourced, and then kind of launch all these beautiful butterflies out into the world and hopefully make some changes in the future.
Thank you. That was a great author's talk. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Olga, for having me. I appreciate it.